Looks like Marlon called back.
Ooh, Marlon in the Philippines. You're talking to Eric and V. How are you doing today?
What's up, guys? How are you?
We're hanging in there.
Yeah, trying to be safe. How about you?
It's just over early morning here, and just wanna talk to you guys.
That's all right. What do you want to talk about?
Shout out to all the Filipinos out there again.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Definitely.
By the way, strap your seatbelts, Eric, because we're gonna go on a little time travel here.
Oh,
I'm
no.
gonna give a history lesson, the Bible.
I want to
Well,
be able to
then.
have a conversation. So as long as I'm not being talked at, but talked to, we should be okay.
I want to talk about the tell than steal, which is another term for the House of David stone. It is a archaeological evidence for the biblical events because it has the inscription House of David. And from what we can read in the Bible, David was the shepherd boy who slayed the giant Goliath and was actually propped on the throne.
So,
Based from my secular source.
Marlon?
Yes.
Your question, man. So if are you saying that if there is something in the Bible that correlates to the real world, that everything in the Bible is also true? Because I have no problem.
Yes.
Yeah, I have no problem saying that, you know, it could have depicted actual historical places. You know, I've used the Spider-Man analogy with you plenty of times before, haven't I?
Yes, but my problem is that Spider-Man has never been talked about on the History Channel nor on National Geographic or
So what?
Discovery Channel.
So what? The reasoning is the same. The logic is the same.
I mean, Spider-Man doesn't have a museum.
So?
Doesn't feature.
I don't care, Marlon. Marlon, the logic is the same. The logic is the same.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. Do you understand that the logic is the same, right? You're saying here's a historical place here's a place that's depicted in the book, right? Because I can see that the place is depicted in the book, therefore everything else in the book is true. So I can pull out the Spider-Man argument and say, hey, Spider-Man, that comic takes place in New York. And because I can show you that New York is a place, therefore Spider-Man exists. The logic is the same.
But, what I'm talking about is that these biblical events were featured on the History of Israel.
So?
It's a topic posted on the History Channel website.
So are ancient aliens. Do you believe in those?
King David and King Solomon, as well as the building of the nation of Israel after World War II.
Right, Marlon, the reason, imagine we are 2,000 years in the future, okay?
Okay, yes.
And we still have some version of the History Channel in the future, 2,000 years from now. And we find New York City buried under an ice cap or something. And that, now because it's history, is on the History Channel, right?
Yes.
Does that mean that we can then say, here is New York City in an ice cap from 2,000 years ago, so Spider-Man must have existed?
No.
Right, yeah. I think we're on the same page there.
Right. So why aren't you applying that same kind of reasoning to what you're talking about?
I just stumbled upon this topic because I read that it's part of the history of Israel, along with the declaration of their independence after World War II in 1945.
So here's my thing here, Marlon, and it's going to determine, you know, your calls in the future and whether or not you get to make them. And that is, last time you called in, you wanted to talk about jellyfish, right?
Yes. Yes.
Looking back at that, how do you feel about that argument? Are you still convinced by it?
Well, not
Do you think
really.
they can plug themselves into a wall and get powers? Do you think that powers are something that are gifted down by God to creatures as some kind of like what I really want to do is I want to keep working on your epistemic framework. I want to keep working on the strengths that you're building. What I don't want to do is I don't want to give time to somebody who is waiting their turn to talk, not actually thinking about it, and then just continuing to go. That's why Atangelo is not allowed to call back.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So are you working on that? Is that something that you're thinking about in between these weeks? Is that something that you're progressing through?
Well, yes, I have been watching some of Aaron Russ videos, and
Okay.
I've stumbled upon the topic for evolution. And there's a statement that he made that really struck me. I thought about it when he said that on life, I mean, RNA is talking about RNA molecules. RNA and RNA doesn't. No one created RNA. RNA duplicates itself. I think I heard that line when he was debating the creationist, and I really searched on it.
All right. I'm grateful that you're doing that. I'm grateful that you're challenging yourself. You're looking at it and you're flexing those muscles and been practicing that.
And I can see even in the 2 calls so far, Marlon, that you're moving in the right direction, right? At first, you came to us with an idea, and we debated the possible probability of that idea and kind of the scientific background of the concept of immortal jellyfishes. And then you went away, and now you're coming back, and you've got sources, right? And you're going to places where you think are, valid, valuable sources, like the History Channel.
Yes.
We can debate whether or not it is, but the instinct to then go find resources from respected groups and media is a good next step. Now we have to talk about, again, the epistemology and the tools you're using behind that.
And there's also a fragment of the Gospel of John located in the John Ryland Library in Manchester, England. What do you guys think about that?
I think that fits very nicely into the example that V gave you earlier. And that just because it's old doesn't mean it's true.
First, the inscription about Pontius Pilate, Jesus Christ talking when he asked Jesus, "Are you the king of the Jews?" And then from another secular source, on the account of Tacitus, he had admitted, the Roman Empire had admitted that they crucified Jesus Christ.
Hold on a second. Are you bringing up Flavius Josephus? Is that what you said?
Yes.
Yeah, read back through it. They do not say that they crucified Jesus Christ. Also, even Christian scholars, modern Christian scholars, have shown that there have been parts of that have been added later on. I mean, Flavius Josephus was meticulous in a lot of things, and if there were a time when people came back from the dead and walked through the streets as depicted after Jesus dies in that story, it would have been mentioned. You think? Didn't Jesus talk about when to replace your sandals? You know, it's so meticulous. The idea that would just be forgotten or left out is ridiculous. But even Christian scholars have gone, you know what, the part where he references Jesus as the Christ is obviously written in later, because that, number one, wouldn't be what Josephus would have known Jesus as.
Right.
You know, that was a moniker that was added later. So definitely go back and look into that. Even Christian scholars would say that some of those pieces that you mentioned didn't really.
Isn't the situation that they just didn't have the technology at that time? They didn't have the printing press and the early
well,
cameras.
that's a good point. So if
Yeah.
Jesus really wants to get the message out to everybody, why did he come to Earth at a time when we didn't have technology and the printing press and iPhones that we could film the crucifixion and resurrection with? That would make a lot less atheists, I bet.
Yeah, it'd be a good start. But
there's also the
Marlon?
tribute penny, Yes, Eric.
Sorry to keep jumping in. I know there's a bit of a delay in the call because we're piping our audio over to the studio, who's sending it over to you on the other side of the planet, and it's going back the other way around. So I think that there's. I don't think you're talking over us, and I'm trying not to talk over you. It's just kind of one of those artifacts that we're going to have to deal with today. But we have gone over a couple of topics, and we do want to make sure that we give time to other callers. But hopefully that gives you something to chew on.
By the way, can I just squeeze in one more topic? What do you guys think about the biblical recipes? I mean, there's the recipe for the manna from heaven that was featured in the book of Exodus. What do you guys think about that?
Well, I know that I used to make lembas bread out of a recipe from online.
Bread,
And I mean, that's cool. I've made food.
I was thinking that teaches people how to grow plants and advance agriculture after Adam and Eve were kicked out of the Garden of Eden.
No, that's if you accept that was there at the time. I think it's more likely that, well, number one, we'd have to determine whether or not that Adam and Eve were ever a thing, which I don't think you could. But
Cain and Abel.
That Torah is what taught people agriculture, I think is very silly. I think that you're putting the cart before the horse on that one. That said, it's good talking to you, man. And stay safe out there.
You're like a best friend to me, man. You're like a best friend. Love that new hairstyle, by the way.
Yeah, big hugs. Well, virtual hugs because, coronavirus.
Fist
Anyway, take it easy, man. All righty.